First item on the agenda is public comments. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to address the board on any issue that's not on the agenda today, please step forward. Seeing none, we'll move to item B, which is approval of the minutes from the May 12th meeting. They were in your packets. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
Move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as published. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item C is the International Building Code Subcommittee status report and discussion. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the Building Advisory Board. At our May 12th meeting, we presented the IRC final subcommittee report and actions. At that time, we established and created our International Building Code Subcommittee for subsequent discussion. We have since that time had what was the third meeting was today. We have almost concluded the International Subcommittee, or International Building Code Subcommittee, has almost concluded their discussions for the International Building Code with amendments. One more meeting and we should be successful in concluding that one and bring it back for the board for their review and discussion. I do have it today as a topic of conversation if we want to go through some of the items that we've discussed thus far, as was submitted in your packet. Many of what you're going to see in the International Building Code was that two chapters specifically, chapters 9 and chapter 7 of the International Building Code, parallel 100% with the International Fire Code. As such, we had much involvement with the our local fire marshal, and along with the subcommittee's input, the International Building Code, the amendments to the Salina Municipal Code for the same, is going to be a much more streamlined version when it comes out this next time, whereas we have deleted many sections that were not just repetition from the 2012 International Building Code text, but also unnecessary at this point, and we will be enforcing, for the most part, the International Building Code as written. As I said, one more meeting will probably be sufficient to bring that back to the Building Advisory Board for their approval to go forth with. And keeping in mind that in this case, the International Building Code and the International Fire Code are both being adopted it simultaneously, probably a little quicker time frame than what we have by the State Fire Marshal's Office. So amendments that are going to be deemed less restrictive will be developed or will be submitted to them as it relates to the fire codes. And they will have to review that as well. That could or could not, well, most often it will delay our process somewhat, whereas we will have to get approval from the state fire marshals for our amendments if they are less restrictive, if it relates to the fire codes, etc. Also today we are attempting new technology that's not exactly performing the way it should. For the first time, we've got a remote host, and that's what we're doing here, so that we could be anywhere in the room and control the screen, as opposed to having 2 or 3 people controlling it at the same time. So we'll attempt this boot up one more time. I'm in control. Technology is a wonderful thing when it works. And as I mentioned, we do have it provided the information I was just speaking about. This is the International Building Code, and this is as far as the subcommittee has gotten. Again, there was only a couple of items remaining. Should be a final discussion on that by our next meeting so we can bring it back to the board for their approval. This brings us up to date to where we are now in the discussions that we've had with the subcommittee to bring you up to date. As you're going to see in here, you're going to see many, many items that have been deleted, as we mentioned. Now, the first part of this you'll see is administrative, and it's also items that reflect work that would be exempt from a permit. The reason we're going to keep this in is it's going to mirror the exact language that we've already had approved in the International Residential Code as far as what is exempt, what is not exempt. So you'll see parallel information there. So whomever it is that's looking at the Salina Municipal Code, whether it's a developer, whether it's a homeowner, or whoever it is wishing to do work, they will see these amendments as it reflects specifically to our jurisdiction. And a lot of information will be repeated throughout our amendments as they reflect the International Building Code, the International Residential Code. So they're all speaking the same language, so to speak, and it's not a confusing issue. Items such as definitions and those type of things, we previously had quite a few definitions that were either added for some reason, but in time, the 2012 edition of the International Building Code has caught up with all of these definitions, and they are merely repetition at this point. One other thing, for the first time, definitions were always throughout the code. I mean, it was nothing guaranteed that you couldn't go to one section and find definitions. You can go to another section and find definitions. You can go to a different code and find definitions. Well, for the first time, the 2012 International Building Code, all definitions, every single one, is located in Chapter 2. They're nowhere else. So they did simplify that process. And by doing so, a lot of these amendments and jurisdictions could go away as well, because they've included all of those into a specific location and combined many definitions that they did not have previously. Again, as I'm saying, for the Chapter 9 and anything to do with the fire sprinkler systems, the fire alarm systems, you're going to see that, and when this comes back next month for the final review and action on the Building Advisory Board's part, you're going to see delete, 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 delete. We are going to enforce fire code and international building code for the most part as written, specific to items related to fire safety. Many of our other amendments we basically kept as is. The only thing we did, and this is all fire related, and this was also recommended by the fire marshal. So when we got out of this section, we'll get into specifics as far as structural elements, wind speeds, design, code requirements as it relates to stairways, etc. Those items, we merely added language to reflect the current wording in the 2012 standards so that it would not be as confusing. And that's a lot of what you're seeing now. Our means of egress, definitions have changed again. A lot of this goes back to what was done in an international residential code setting. For instance, we no longer use symbols for feet, inches. We actually spell it out because apparently we got challenged with that at some point in time. We can no longer identify feet, inches. Maybe we thought it was quotation marks. I don't know. So we use the words feet, inches. We spell out much more now than what we used to. Accessibility requirements, of course, we have to keep our amendments in there to reflect the standards of which we enforce as opposed to Chapter 11 of the International Building Code. So this will come back in its final version for the Building Advisory Board for their final review and edits next month. And again, much of this is thankfully has been able to be deleted to a great extent as the codes have progressed every 3 years, they've addressed many of these items, so it's no longer amendment, no longer necessary. It reflects the design elements that we need in the city. And is there any discussion on this thus far from any of the board members or any of the members of the audience as we're going through this?
Any comments from the board? The one thing I heard today that I would like staff to follow up on, which you said you would in the subcommittee meeting, and that is to get a clarification from the state fire marshal as to exactly what it is that they will be reviewing and requiring to be reviewed. Because I think that Mr. Flory and Mr. Bixby both had encounters with the state fire marshal, and he told them things differently than what we had been dealing with. So
yes, that's what we're hearing now. And yes, as I said in the subcommittee meeting, I will follow up on that, and we will confirm 100% that specifically what we need to provide the state fire marshal for their review as far as our amendments on this next. You know, previously it was a very, very convoluted, confusing, time-consuming, and I do believe that the state fire marshal's office has come to a different way of thinking at this point and is not requiring all of these previous submittals that were unnecessary as far as their end.
And for the audience's purposes, it's primarily what Mr. Bixby and Mr. Flory heard was that fire marshal's only wanting to review things that relate to life safety and fire code issues.
That's correct, and less restrictive life safety and fire-related issues.
So, any other comments from the board? Any comments from the audience? Seeing none, just to help everybody understand the process here, after we're done with the International Building Code, then we have the Uniform Mechanical and Plumbing Codes to go through.
That's correct.
And we have the National Electric Code yet to go through.
And the
then we have the
Energy
International
Conservation.
and the Fire Code.
Correct.
Once those are done, we will be in a position then to submit all of that information to the City Commission for their review and ultimate adoption. So we're still several months away from being able to do that, but that's the process that we're in today.
And that's a common process throughout the nation when everybody's doing the code cycle changes. This is common to see this in most jurisdictions, and it is a very lengthy process, but it needs to be, because we want codes in force and codes in place that best serve the needs of this jurisdiction. What is best for us? What is best for Salina? What is best for the buildings and safety of our citizens? And that's the purpose of all of this. That's why it takes the length of time that it does. And as Mr. Marr stated, it will continue to be an ongoing process. And we have many more meetings to come.
Okay. There's no action required on item C. There's no further discussion. We'll move on to item D, which is establishing a subcommittee for the review and discussion and recommendations regarding the comparison between the 2006 and 2012 code comparisons with the Uniform Plumbing Code and the Uniform Mechanical Code. What we've done up to this point on the other subcommittees is we've taken the board members who represent the various trades that relate specifically to those areas and asked those members to participate on those subcommittees. So when we're dealing with the plumbing and the mechanical code, here we're dealing with the plumbing and mechanical contractors, mechanical engineers, those people. So I will appoint all those people that are on the board to that committee.
Well, and we have one volunteer that's not present with us, but I wanted to make sure that I shared his email with the board that he's interested in serving on the Uniform Mechanical Code and the Uniform Plumbing Code Subcommittee, and that would be Mr. Frazier.
Okay.
It's interesting that all of the representatives of those trades are not here today. I think they knew this was coming.
Automatic
Dave
appointment.
Miller, he's here.
Yeah, the
He can
engineer.
back up. Okay.
So we can request action, then staff would request action from the board to go ahead and establish that. Being that we only have one more meeting left for the International Building Code Subcommittee, to go ahead and get this established would help staff as well, so that we
Okay.
can go ahead and get some appropriate packets out to those entities.
Okay. And anyone at large from the public is also allowed to attend those meetings and to participate in the discussion. And if you want the packets that are sent out, you can request those electronically as well. So, do you want to list those members that we're talking about specifically so that
Yes,
for
please,
the record?
for the
Go ahead and
record.
do that. Will you go ahead and read those off?
Well, for the members,
You want me to pick these out? So it'd be Dave Miller, Jim Ravenkamp, Ryan White? No, not Ryan. Mike Prester, and Mark Frazier. Carlin's Electrical. So do I just appoint those, or do you want the board to vote on that?
you can just appoint those.
Okay, so appointed.
So appointed. Very good. We'll make a record of that, and then I'll make
Okay.
sure that the packets go out to the proper
Okay.
entities. And keep in mind that all the contractors are welcome to come to these meetings as well to get your continuing education units. And now, this will be a little different as far as the uniform codes. This is going to be a combination thing. The uniform plumbing code, the uniform mechanical code, we're going to go back to back without hesitation on that one, doing both at the same time, as simultaneous as we possibly can, to try to make it streamline this process as much as we can. Much of the work has already been done and been provided to me through the courtesy of IAPMO and the representatives. So I see this one going fairly quickly, and I'll be sure that the appropriate packets go out accordingly.
Okay. Moving on to item E, which is other business and announcements. Announcement would be make sure that all of you in attendance get signed up for your continuing education credits for today's meeting. Is there any other business that we need to discuss? We've got the Development Services Comprehensive Fee Schedule, which was attached to the packet today.
We do, and that is for the board's to look at and review. The fee schedule that I provided to the board, let's go to my next. You'll see very small changes in the fee schedule that's shown on the screen. For instance, for the building permit fees, the first $500 was previously $25 and now it's $27.50. And you'll see small incremental changes such as that. We wanted to bring this to the board to your attention so there's no surprises there. And the fee schedule's already been approved. And this is what they are going up to. Again, the dollar amount is as small as any of us could have possibly made it. We're looking at small incremental increases throughout. And this is specific to our development services. And we did want to bring this to your attention for your review and for your informational item so that you are aware that it is changed. So the permit fees will be going up, but they will not be going up in a significant amount, so.
Are these, you have, on these effective dates, some of these haven't been changed since 2009? Is that what that means?
Yes, some of this goes way back to 2009. Some of it actually before that, I believe. So you're looking at the effective date and the actual 2016 proposed fees is what we're talking about. Yeah, some of these have not been changed since 2009. I thought we had one or two since 2007, but I'm not
There's
seeing
one
that.
2004.
2004, yes.
Oh, that's refunds.
And if there's any discussion on that, I'll be happy to answer any questions on that one. But again, this is informational. This is our 2016 proposed fees, and wanted everyone to be aware that they are going up ever so slightly.
The upcoming term,
Yes, our next item, we have 3 individuals on our board presently, Mr. Morris, Mr. Prinster, Mr. Flory. Your term is going to expire on August 31st, 2015. As such, staff would appreciate an expression of interest form to be filled out, which I just so happen to have those for your convenience. And please turn those in because staff would very much appreciate you to serve on the board once again. And again, we have 2 youth members that we're still seeking candidates for that one, and those openings are still open as well. So for you, after the meeting, I'll provide you with these expression of interest forms and turn them in as expeditiously as possible. Would be greatly appreciated.
okay. Future agenda topics.
As you mentioned, we have several more subcommittees to go. We will be establishing a subcommittee for the International Fire Code, National Electric Code, and what will be somewhat different than the reason that I probably put this one on tail end. Previously, we do not have a section in our municipal code to address and/or this will be a new code for the city to look into as the International Energy Conservation Code. So we'll have much discussion on that one. And not only establishing amendments that we do not presently have, but what's going to be best for the city of Salina and the citizens and our buildings here. Again, there were 2 openings for our youth members that are remaining. And one other item of interest, which was provided to me, the planning commission meeting on June 2nd, there's a text amendment. And what it's doing is amending the consumer fireworks facility regulations, which is going to allow or increase the maximum allowable size of consumer firework, the facilities tents. As you know, we have fireworks sales and things within the city limits here, and this is going to increase those tent sizes from 2,400 to 5,800 square feet, and increase the size of the inventory storage from 120 to 420 square feet. This is not 100% official at this time, but I do believe the fire marshal's had some input in this, and we're going to make sure he is 100% comfortable with this as well. It's maybe not so much the size, but the amount of product within there of hazardous fireworks, etc. And with that, that's all I have this afternoon.
Okay. Anything else we need to discuss? Hearing none, we'll consider this meeting adjourned.
Thank you.